Hey guys, thanks for making the time to watch. I'm Jonah Oliver. I'm Athletics Australia's lead psychologist. A bit about me, I've spent nearly 20 years working in primarily elite or professional sport and spend most of my time traveling the world working with athletes in both athletics as well as across a range of Olympic programs and an awful lot in the professional codes. There's a little bit about me there on the screen. I just want to actually start by acknowledging the people who are going to work today at the forefront of the medical professions and the services keeping our country going. I think there's a lot to be said for the people who are putting their lives on the line, literally, to fight this virus. And I just want to acknowledge that I'm really grateful that that I'm not in that position. I get to sit here on a webinar and talk to you, thanks to the brave men and women who are out there at the coalface fighting this virus. So I think it's really important to acknowledge those people. So I guess what's happening now, we put some questions out to the general public and to the athletes, and a whole bunch of questions came in, and I thought I'd just do a little bit of a summary of the key themes of what's going on psychologically, and then I'll address the questions people have sent in, particularly at the end. I think there's three main things that are happening. Typically, this is how our brains work, right? We crave certainty, we crave permanence, and we crave immortality. Now, that might sound a bit Dr. Phil, but let me explain it. We think we're really flexible people who are really cruisy and love variety, yet you go to the same cafe and order the same breakfast with a side of bacon and smashed avo every Sunday. So, we're creatures of habit. And right now, everything's been flipped upside down. You'll see right now there's huge amount of uncertainty. So you're all on the internet, checking Twitter, reading the newspaper constantly, searching for more information about what's happening with the virus. And that's just your brain wanting more certainty, but you're probably not getting too much. There's certainly transience. That means things are always changing every day. What's the government going to say? Can we go to sport? Are the Olympics on? Can we train in groups? So there's a lot of shifting landscape. So that causes a lot of uncertainty in us. And there's actually, a real threat to our well-being, our mortality. Probably for the first time in many of your lives, you've had to stop and think a bit about, I don't want to get sick because I don't want to get ill or unwell or even the worst, die from this. So I think for all people at the moment around the world, there's a huge amount of uncertainty. There's a huge amount of change or transience. And there's also some anxiety around our own safety and well-being. And so it's really interesting to see where that takes us as humans. The basic phases of this response is, I'm just going to keep it really simple. I think there's an initial phase. I'd say right now, everyone's really busy being uncertain, really busy working out how to build a home gym in the garage, being really busy working out how do I do university online now. So I think we're in that acute phase. And in the acute phase, most people haven't had the time to stop and actually feel sorry for themselves. They're just flat out trying to work out how to make a new normal. That might go on for another week or two until I think we start to get a bit into that phase. And already the athletes I'm working with are starting to get a bit of a rhythm in their training. They've worked out whether they can do some strength training in their garage, whether they can run at the local park, etc. So there's a little bit of that phase starting to come to an end. And I think we're now moving into the second phase, which is that classic new normal, to use a cliched, overused term. So what is that new normal? I think in the next couple of weeks, most people should start to get into some habits that are around, getting back into training habits, working closely with their coach and their, the support they might get from their support team around that. What I would suggest is keep an eye on how you're going. If you're still stuck in phase one, you're still caught up in the bit of the panic and the distress, and you're still stuck on Twitter checking all the updates on what's happening, it might mean you're a little bit slow to update and move into the second phase. So make sure you're, sharing how you're going with your coaches or your support, or your family, loved ones, and keep an eye on that, because it is, there will come a time where we do need to get back out there. We do need to get back into training. We do need some degree of normality And that's really good for our mental health. So just keep an eye on where you're at with that. I'll use a bit of a Dr. Phil term here. There will be some habituation to isolation. What does habituation mean? It means we get used to things really quickly. If I go and eat lobster every day, I'm going to crave a steak after a while. It doesn't matter what it is, we get used to things. So I think there's a benefit to that. I think in the next couple of weeks, most of us won't be so challenged by home isolation or training in the garage. We'll get used to it. And that's good. We'll get onto things. We'll start getting, our strength back or our conditioning back and doing the work and training load that we need. On the flip side, you might also get frustrated that you just want to get back out to normal. Why can't I go back to the VIS? Why can't I go back to the running club? Why can't we just go back out? The statistics on the news said we haven't got any new cases. Let's get back out there. And that's just your brain saying, I'm ready to go again. Whereas the government, who tracks how things are actually going, are going to say, no, we probably need to stay in isolation a little bit longer. So I imagine there could be a bit of frustration building in the coming months where the government might say, it's not safe to do that yet psychologically you're going, I'm ready to go. So just keep an eye on that as well, and basically expect a little bit of a longer haul than you probably want to. I think a lot of athletes are saying, surely this is only, 4 or 5 weeks and we'll be back into it. And the answer is probably not. I think we need to get ready for this being, months until we're really in a place where we can get back out and train how we used to. All of us need purpose and connection. Okay, that's a fundamental human need. And I think where people are starting to struggle a little bit is when they're sitting on a couch, they're watching Netflix, they're doing whatever, and they're a little bit rudderless because maybe you're not working, maybe uni's a bit different now, it's online. Certainly you're not part of your track club anymore in the same sense. So you've lost a little bit of that purpose and connection. And I think that's where people will struggle a little bit. So you're going to have to think about novel ways, creative ways. There's certainly lots of technology and apps I know that people are using to create social connection. That's important. But also progress. We love feeling like we're making progress in our sport. So train hard, work hard. Otherwise, you'll feel like you're not making any forward momentum. So, don't ease up. Yeah, take a week or two in phase 1 to adjust to the new normal and get your home set up, and that's fine. But I'd also encourage you to not dramatically drop off the cliff in terms of your training load. And I know my physiotherapy and strength and conditioning colleagues would echo that, because that puts you at an injury risk as well, right? So you often put your head on the pillow at night and sleep better when you've trained well. I know you can't train in your normal way at the moment. Be creative though, and explore all of your options, because typically when you've done a great job and you've trained really hard, your mental health and your well-being and your satisfaction, your sense of purpose are all in a much better place. So I'll be encouraging everybody to really seek out high training standards while we're going through this phase. An interesting idea is happiness and satisfaction and well-being and thriving, or whatever term you want to use. What we find is true satisfaction occurs when you're challenged. Going and playing soccer against my 4-year-old daughter isn't going to challenge me, but going and doing climbing Mount Everest, doing a really hard crossword puzzle, it's doing things that stretch or challenge you, give you a sense of fulfillment and satisfaction. So this is not a time to take it easy. This is not a time just to sort of sit on the couch. Seek things out that really stretch you, and you might find that, again, you put your head on the pillow at night and you're feeling a bit better within yourself. A lovely little activity for everyone tuning in and watching this would be maybe actually reflect upon a positive that's coming from this. I think we're really focused on the imposition or the negative. I can't train normally. I can't see my friends. I can't go to the Olympics. I can't do this. And all that's real and really hard. But there's also a lot of positives. For me, I get to spend more time with my young kids. I get to work on my veggie patch, whatever, right? I'm sure there's things for everybody right now, if you're being honest and takes a moment to connect to it, that are actually things you wouldn't have normally been able to do if you weren't in this really unique position of home isolation. So a nice thing to do is every day, or even at the close of a day, share with your loved ones or your mates or whoever, or write in your journal, what's one thing that I'm really grateful that this current situation has actually allowed me to do more of. And probably the last point is, I think this is your opportunity for a competitive advantage. There's going to be a lot of athletes in a lot of countries that aren't in our position, who won't have the open spaces to train in, they won't have the houses with a garage, or psychologically, they are just in a state of distress that, we can maybe take advantage of in terms of you guys getting back into your normal training habits, so that when the competitive season starts up again, you're in a really good place. So I think the way we respond to this adversity can really define what competition looks like when it comes, because it's coming. It's just going to be a little bit, later than we thought. And the challenge is, can we go back into that competitive phase in a better place as a nation than so many of our rivals? And I think, sport doesn't apologize. The stopwatch never lies. So we have to stay committed to our training standards during this phase. I've got some questions here that got sent in. I'll do my best to answer them. What is sports psychology? What is your role? Okay, what is sports psychology and what's my role? I keep it really simple. I help people focus on the right thing at the right time. I can't make you run faster. That's up to your physiology. But I can help you when your mind is distracted. Where does our mind normally get distracted? On our fears, on the outcome, on this time, on our opponents, on the weather, on our parents, whatever, right? So my job is to help you focus on the right thing at the right time, which is typically whatever you and your coach have worked on in terms of your technique or your cue or your race plan. Next question. My daughter sometimes gets frustrated, angry with performance. It impacts her. Yeah, anger and frustration. Well, firstly, we don't need to fix her. That last bit. There's nothing wrong with your daughter for feeling angry and frustrated. I get angry and frustrated. Every human gets angry and frustrated. It's about helping people understand that we get anger or worry or fear about things we care about. And it probably means that somewhere along the line, she's developed really high standards, and she hates it when she either breaks her standards or feels something's unfair or unjust. So the tip there is to normalize her experience of being frustrated when she doesn't reach her standards, but you also might want to keep an eye on, has she created unrealistic expectations or standards, which means it doesn't matter how well she performs, she'll never reach them. And that just means she's just going to be sad, disappointed, angry all of the time. So we've got to watch that. Next one, what advice would you give someone who's making their first senior Australian team, or after they have successfully made the team and waiting to perform? Okay, look, if you're about to make your first team, or you've just made it and you're about to perform, the best advice is stop worrying that you're worried. It's okay to be nervous. So many athletes underperform, not because they're nervous, they underperform because they freak out that they're nervous and they try to stop being nervous, and then they lose their focus and forget how to run. The secret to sports psychology is allowing athletes to be human. It's okay to worry and not sleep and be a bit nervous. But you know what? If I know that's normal, then I don't lose my focus and I can compete. It's a bit like saying, do you freak out when lactic acid shows up? Well, no, that's normal. It's part of running. Well, why do you freak out when you're a bit nervous before a race? It's normal. It's going to happen. How about you stop worrying that you get nervous? All of a sudden, that frees up my focus so I can focus on the race plan. So to answer your question, it's okay. Allow them to feel the normal range of human emotions. Maybe stop their attempts at trying to not be that way. Pat GC. Why doesn't AA provide these and other services to some of their top junior athletes as well? Look, I don't know. I'm not in senior management at Athletics Australia. I will say, though, that I deliver workshops at every or most of all of the meets around Australia. And we offer it to coaches, we offer it to parents, and I often get 5 to 15 people in the room. So I'm actually a bit surprised at the lack of coach education or parent education in terms of uptake. That when the NSO or the institutes offer education, that generally the rooms aren't that full. I hope that's not too controversial, but to answer your question, I think Athletics Australia do offer some services to juniors, mainly through coaches and parent education, which is the appropriate way to do it. But not many people show up. So that'd be something I'd love to see change. So maybe, Pat, you can spread the word next time we're doing a workshop. Megan, do you see a difference in mental health athletes in different countries? That's a big cultural question around. I don't know if I can answer that in the time I've got. What are some of the strangest coping techniques you've come across? That's a good question. Coping strategies. Look, that's where you get into strange things like OCD and superstitions and people telling me they're just their rituals and their pre-race sort of things they do, and it's all a lie, right? It's just a coping technique. I've seen people, having to wear certain colour underpants or a pair of underpants that they've worn since under 14s that hardly fit them anymore. I've seen people having to drink the same colour Powerade. I've seen people, always have to put their left shoe on before their right. It's countless. And it's really important to look at superstitions and realize they don't in any way help you run faster or jump higher. If lining up your drink bottles like Rafael Nadal makes him a better tennis player, then I'll do that this weekend and play better tennis, right? He plays good tennis because he's a bloody good tennis player. It's got nothing to do with drink bottle labels. So it's just an attempt to try to feel luckier or less anxious. So you got to watch it because it becomes a bit of a pattern and can lead to OCD. Next question. I've got a 14-year-old daughter who has anxiety. She's taking a long time before running up and balking. Yeah, okay. She's waiting for the right feeling. It's becoming a problem. Yeah, okay, great question. So this is obviously a long jumper, I'm assuming, and they're getting longer and longer before they run down the runway, and then they're balking, that classic 5 strides, 3 strides out from the board because they don't get that right feeling. Really, really common. And you see it in all different sports. And that is where she's focusing on how she's feeling, not the behavioural motor pattern of her stride length or what she's doing, accelerating into the board and what have you. And what that happens is we go internal and we focus really on that sense of either this feels right or the adrenaline of this feels wrong, and you're using your emotions as your guide. The best way I treat that is I say, when I was at the London Olympics, I never saw a gold medal handed out to the athlete that was feeling the best. The long jump pit doesn't care whether you felt right as you ran into that board. And we also know that when you don't give those feelings power, you probably actually got the right run-up speed and length because you've done it so many times. So you actually misinterpret the message inside your brain and balk or run through when you didn't need to. So you want to increase your ability to feel uncomfortable. I call it comfort with discomfort. If I need to feel perfect every time I run down a runway, I'm going to run through for the rest of my life. What I've got to get really good at is knowing that as I come into that runway and the discomfort builds, I'm going to commit to my technique, commit to my run up. And I might foul, I might get my distance wrong, but my coach can then adjust that. If I've run in at the same speed, typically the same velocity, and I'm just, this far short or this far over the board, it's easy. My coach can adjust me. But if I'm changing my running speeds and technique because of how I'm feeling, no coach can fix that because it's so varied. So the feedback to your daughter is learn to feel the discomfort, but don't change how you run. You don't, how I feel is not important. How I run is important. And matter of fact, you're going to feel the discomfort every time you get close to that board because that's what brains do. Next question. How do people reach out and find help? I just reach out to your local sporting body or your institute. So your academies of sport around Australia, they have people within Athletics Australia who could link you in with the appropriate psychologist. Question from Annalise Ruby. G'day, Annie. When struggling with traditional forms of mindfulness, guided ones on apps, and feeling particularly anxious or overwhelmed, what are some other things I can do to reset my mind and gain benefits of mindfulness? Great question, Annie. And good to see you still doing your mindfulness. Mindfulness is really, really important. I can't emphasize enough how great that is for the focus areas of people's brain. If you want to be a great athlete, you've got to be great at focusing. How do you develop the strength of focus? You do mindfulness because it strengthens your prefrontal cortex and the areas of your brain that help you focus. So firstly, keep doing mindfulness. Let's talk about the difference though between formal mindfulness, like on an app or a downloaded app on your phone or a I was about to say CD, versus being mindful. So formal mindfulness is listening to music, listening to a voice guiding you through something, and that can sort of work. And at times, though, your mind might wander and get distracted. Then there's being mindful, and that's very different, right? So it's like you want to train the brain by doing mindfulness exercises, but you also want to just increase your ability at being more aware, being better at being in the present, connecting into what you're doing in the here and now. The biggest trap, which is sort of in the question you've said there, Annie, is I'm doing it when I'm feeling a bit anxious or overwhelmed. Remember, we don't do mindfulness to relax or to get rid of our anxiety. We do mindfulness to bring our attention into the here and now. So typically what we have to do is we've got to get better at going, it's okay to be a bit anxious, especially now in the current world. It's okay to feel a bit overwhelmed, how I'm going to maintain training when I can't use the gym like I used to and what have you. But that's okay. I'm just going to let that be there, but I'm just going to do my mindfulness to bring myself into the here and now. So in a roundabout way, don't do mindfulness to get rid of anxiety, accept your anxiety, make room for it, and be mindful or do your mindfulness as a way of bringing yourself back into the here and now. And then challenge yourself of not just doing mindfulness, but also can I bring a greater awareness into the present in my day-to-day actions. Hopefully that wasn't too Dr. Phil for everybody. Last one, what would be some ways in which you can start bringing more psychological flexibility in your approach to your sport, whether that's running, training, or racing? Thanks. Psychological flexibility. Yeah, right. Basically, psychological flexibility is the ability to make room for whatever you're thinking and feeling. Anger, frustration, anxiety, pain, even if it's lactic acid pain. Making room for discomfort, bringing yourself back into the present, and then connecting to what matters. Where I see people getting psychologically rigid is when they set a goal, like, I want to set some times for a training piece. That's important. Goal setting matters. But they mix up setting a goal and their attachment to achieving that goal. I want to climb Mount Everest. Great, set the goal. Doesn't mean I'm going to get there. An avalanche might come. The wind might be too strong. Something might happen. But if I did everything in my power to climb Everest and I just didn't get the outcome, I'll be disappointed. That's fine. But I can't be so, hard on myself that I didn't get there, because I did everything I could. So if you've set yourself some goals in training and some splits and some times and some weights in the gym, whatever it is, and they're appropriate, good, do it. But let go of your attachment that therefore you should always achieve that. What you've got to focus more on is, did I train with 100% commitment, application, and dedication to the pursuit of that? And if you didn't cut any corners, you gave everything to it, then you should be able to put your head on the pillow. So in a roundabout way, greater psychological flexibility is about making room for the old chatter, being better at being in the here and now, and being really committed to what you need to achieve in that moment. But when you're pursuing a goal, you don't get confused by setting a goal and your attachment that you therefore should always achieve it. Hopefully that's not too of a roundabout answer. Some great questions from everyone there. Thanks for sending them in. So my ultimate summary at the moment is, we're in some crazy times. You're probably still in the acute phase of adjusting to trying to train and work out the best you can. I think we're all trying to adjust to that. Be mindful not to take too much of a pause. I think we need to get back into a new way of normal, new way of training pretty soon. And I think if we do that well, we might actually have a competitive advantage over other nations. Psychologically, we're all going through it. So there's a bit of a common bond. If you find you're not coming out of phase one, you're still stuck at home, you're still a bit panicked, you're still caught up in the acute distress of what the world is and the impact it's having on you, reach out. Reach out to a mate, reach out to a loved one, reach out to your institute, because there's people out there who can really help us and I'd encourage you to do so. So thanks for tuning in, and hopefully that was of help.